Hello and welcome to the Three Towers podcast. I'm Chris Griffith.
I'm John Butler.
Today, John, unfortunately, we have a sinking feeling because our levies are going up and our sinking fund, well, that's the fund that we have to do maintenance, has been in a fair bit of controversy.
Yes, it has. Yes, we invested $1.5 million of that into real estate, and yet our fees, our levies are still going up.
Are still going up. You might not know, but in the body corporates, it's traditional to have a report called a sinking fund report, which lists the maintenance that's going to be needed, the longer term maintenance over up to 15 years. That can be like redoing air conditioning systems, replacing lifts and all sorts of things. Now, one of the controversies here is the last sinking fund report was done in 2018 and there wasn't any other report done since, and they're supposed to be done every 2 or 3 years.
Yes, it should be done far more frequently. What are we at? Something like 8 years now, and costs of construction have gone up tremendously in that time.
Absolutely. Because the levies were kept artificially low, in our view, what we're finding now is our sinking fund levies are going to shoot up an awful lot, and that will affect all owners every time you pay your levies. I've done some calculations here on my levies, and instead of paying a couple of years ago $11.28 per year for sinking fund, in 2 or 3 years I'll be paying over double the amount of sinking fund levies.
Yeah.
Owners now are going to be paying in money on sinking fund that should have been paid in over the years but hadn't been.
Yes, we've been regaled with tales over the years of how low our levies are. It's been wonderful, but there's a price to pay for that.
And the price is in the new sinking fund report, which actually spells out we need a lot more money for the maintenance going ahead.
Yeah, I did the same calculations that you did, and the comparison between our levies, our sinking fund levies last year and 2028, as you say, the levy is going to double.
Absolutely,
Double.
absolutely.
So everybody, we used to say, get your checkbook ready, get your credit card ready, you're going to need it.
That's before we take in the admin fund, which if you look at your levy notices is like 3 times the sinking fund amount. We don't know of any rises yet, but if it goes up substantially too, then that is going to be a lot of money, a lot of payout.
Absolutely, yeah.
This sinking fund has been a controversy here, and a lot of it is to do with, in our view, the committee just not following the rules, just not going about doing things in a conventional way, being very closed, and owners are now paying the price for that. If we go back to 2020, some $1.4 million was removed from the sinking fund to invest in 4 apartments, which are in the building here. John, do you want to take up the story?
Well, yeah, the motion that passed the AGM gave the committee authority to invest sinking fund money because interest rates were a bit low at the time. We were told that the committee wanted that authority. They were given that authority subject to some very strict conditions. The one that counts the most is that any investment was supposed to be in accordance with the advice of a licensed financial advisor. Now, unbeknownst to all the owners who voted at that AGM, the committee had already consulted a financial advisor. That financial advisor was told the committee wanted to buy apartments in our building. He said, of course, that that's against the Body Corporate Act. He also said to them, look, I'm not licensed to advise on real estate investments. And in his report, he cautioned against it 9 times. You might note that in the chairperson's latest email, newsletter, he says the financial advisor recommended buying real estate. He didn't do that.
Yeah, I've got the exact quote here from Innovative Financial Solutions. The strategy of the body corporate is to invest in units in a property trust that invests in residential investment units. And it went on to say, I am not providing advice on the legalities of using body corporate sinking fund assets to invest in units in the unit property trust. So they thought it was one of these legitimate unit property trusts, not that we were going to go out and, with the lawyer's advice, form a company which then bought the 4 apartments in this building, which is contrary to body corporate law. You're not supposed to buy apartments in your own building. And then set up what is probably the worst scheme you could for investment. The company would buy these 4 units and give the sinking fund shares, but it's a pretty terrible system, because when we sell these 4 apartments, we're going to have to pay 25% in capital gains tax and other charges as well that goes with that. Worse still, it took away the power of the owners through the body corporate to have much of a say, or any kind of say, in how this company that was investing their money would be run. We had the chairman of the body corporate in charge of it, but in actual fact there was no teeth for the owners. So these guys could actually flout the body corporate rules to a large extent. For example, instead of giving the body corporate back dividends on these investments, they actually appear to have channeled the money back through the admin fund, from where we haven't seen what's going on. And this has meant that in the period 2021 to 25, we've probably lost out on something like $226,000 of dividends for actually the investment of these 4 properties.
That's right.
That's taking into account some transactions which kind of look a little bit weird. For example, the company which didn't do anything other than hold the 4 apartments was charged $126,000 in legal fees, $154,000 in management fees. Now, some of those legal fees may well have been legitimate in terms of the money that the lawyer owned, but it was still a lot of money, something like $60,000. So if you subtract that, you get this figure of $226,000 in dividends that haven't been paid back to the sinking fund. And this strange setup, together with not paying dividends and with the extra charges that will be incurred when we sell it, means again we have less money in the sinking fund, which will affect our levy. So it's not a particularly good look all around.
Just to add a little bit of flavour to that, going back to the permission that the body corporate committee was given to invest money, there was no mention of apartments, no mention of private companies. They just went ahead and did it. There was no mention that they'd already, as I said before, they'd already consulted a financial advisor who wasn't licensed to give advice, and they just went ahead and did it. They already had a plan to set up a private company and buy shares in the companies and give the company the money to buy the apartments.
This was put together mainly by the committee and the lawyer that is engaged in it. And the adjudicator that was looking at all of this, they basically just echoed what John had said. The respondent did not conduct sufficient due diligence before making the investment. It failed to comply with the Trust Act, which requires it to exercise care, diligence, and skills, invest in the best interests of future beneficiaries, and not invest in speculative or hazardous investments. Now, the sinking fund's not supposed to invest in speculative investments. It shouldn't even be doing this.
No.
There is an appeal at the moment to QCAT, the tribunal around this. It has been going on for years, but there is a possibility that QCAT may decide that this is also not on in terms of body corporate legislation and require the apartments to be sold. But John, that may not happen, and we're in a situation where we don't have dividends, and the question is, we've got these big increases in levies, we've got 4 apartments that we own. Is it time to sell them?
Well, given the doubling of the sinking fund levy in 2028, I would think that would be a very good idea.
It makes sense because owners are paying we're going to be paying double the sinking fund amount. We should be able to sell one or more of these apartments to smooth over these big increases,
Yes.
because it's money that the sinking fund would have, and it would lessen the extreme nature of these increases.
Yeah, so we've been told that's the whole point of investing, if we can use that term, in buying apartments.
Yeah. So should we sell the units? Now, in one of his newsletters, the chairman of the body corporate committee here says, well, we can't do anything about it because we need an AGM, because owners had agreed before not to sell the units at an AGM. Therefore, we need another AGM. And of course, we don't have an AGM until October, and a lot can happen in the property market between now and October. We've got, at the moment, a bit of downtrending of housing and apartment prices, mainly due to the impact of the budget, which deals with capital gains tax. According to real estate agents I've spoken to, it's starting to soften a little bit here. Units are taking a little longer to sell, and that would lessen the return that we would get from selling those 4 units if we left it till October. Now, I say, again, anything can happen in the market, but if we see a downward trend, say even if we had our prices of those 4 units decrease from current value by $50,000 each, that's $200,000 less to recoup minus the fees if we were to sell it. So there's a lot at stake. Now, there is one device possible if owners felt really strongly about this to try and help offset these big levy increases, and that's an EGM, an extraordinary general meeting. Now, John, what's your take on that?
Well, that's a general meeting, the same as the AGM is a general meeting, but we need 25%.
It can be called at any time with owners'
Yes, we
agreement.
need 25% of owners to call for that meeting, and then the body corporate committee is obliged to call the meeting.
Yeah, well, I mean, 25% of owners might be a bit worried about their levies going up and may agree to that.
Well, when you're talking about your levies doubling, they might be interested.
We're not saying here that we should do it, but we're just putting this out to you as an option if you felt strongly that the body corporate should be selling these apartments sooner or later, or at least to have the go-ahead to sell them as the market gives us an advantage to do that.
But let me point to something else that, in a sense, makes what we've been talking about a little academic. The apartments are owned by a private company. Now, the chairman saying the owners voted against selling the apartments is a big red herring, because the owners have no say in the sale of those apartments. The chairman is the sole director of the company, and he can decide if he wants to sell them or not. We cannot require him to do that. It's his company, they're his apartments.
That $1.4 million was taken out of the sinking fund to buy these 4 apartments, but these 4 apartments are owned by not the sinking fund or the body corporate, but by the company.
Yeah.
And so the company really has the shots in terms of selling it. What we got are shares. We don't have the trust deed or title to the 4 apartments. We have shares in the company that owns the 4 apartments. It is a setup where legally the chairman, who is also the executive director of the company, basically can do what they want. It's been a terrible, terrible structure to do this. But I think for a lot of owners, what their concern it will, at the end of the day, is how much they pay.
Yes.
There's a body of owners, as you could probably guess by us, who've been following this closely, and we've seen flouting of various rules. You're not supposed to move money between sinking and admin fund. Well, it's been done via a company. You're not supposed to own units in your own complex. Well, it's been done via the company again. And then we've seen these strange transactions and fees for administrative support, which to us look more like ways of moving money around without us really having a handle on it. It's been unsatisfactory. That's one big issue, but really at the end of the day, what will matter mostly to owners is that they're paying more in their levies. And that comes too, John, as we know, the Gold Coast City Council is going to be jacking up the rates as well.
Yes,
so it's going to cost a fair bit more when you pay out quarterly here.
Yeah, in the meantime, get your credit card ready. You're going to need it. Can I make one more comment about the red herring of the chairman in terms of the owners voted against selling the apartments? Firstly, I've already said the owners have no say in whether or not the apartments are sold. That's entirely up to the sole director of the company. It's a private company. But the motion that we're talking about, or that the chairman is talking about, is one that he put to the AGM, and that motion said, let's sell the apartments. I'm paraphrasing, but that's what it said. And then, in the explanatory note that went out to all owners, the committee strongly recommended against selling the apartments. So the motion was lost. So it wasn't actually a deliberate, conscious decision of owners to not sell the apartments. It was a motion to sell the apartments that was lost. It's a subtle difference, but these are the games that are being played.
Well, on that note, all I can do is wish you a really happy June. It's nice up here. We sleep better at night when it's a bit cooler. Before I sign off, I'd like to announce we're going to probably have some meetings of owners organised to discuss some of these issues as the year proceeds. We'll be in touch with you via the newsletter that goes out with the Three Towers podcast about that program of activities. So it's goodbye from me and John.
Yes, and it's goodbye from me too. Keep watching.